Where we dig through the archives to find some great action for you, and following the death of Chris Finnegan, we thought it appropriate to remind you all what a tough fighter Chris was. 1972 was a massive year for Finnegan. He fought 6 times in total, including twice for the European light heavyweight title and once for the world title. In April that year, he faced the Canadian Ron Wilson at the ice rink in Nottingham.
Just for the record, they're very light for light heavyweights. Finnegan was 12 stone 2 1/4. Wilson was only 11 stone 13. So just 3 1/4 pounds in it. And you have this fair-haired now, I'm going to call him Canadian, but in fact he's had 78 fights and he's only 23 and only 1 in Canada. He really is the most active light heavyweight come middleweight in the world. He's 160. Drawn 5. He said, I only fight for a living and I have a lot of fights, so he must be what is known as a promoter's fighter, wanted everywhere. That was a good shot there from Finnegan. That really rocked Wilson's head a bit. But it doesn't bemuse him at all, because he seems to be, when he's stung like this, he really is more dangerous than ever. But at last, Finnegan's really looking like a champion now. He started to get that variety of punches that counts at this level. With a minute to go in this round. Just catching Wilson coming in now. He's timing it a bit better. He's sort of fighting himself into shape. Trying to trap Wilson into a neutral corner there and let the punches go. Finnegan turning it on a bit now. Can he stop Wilson? It will be a performance now if he can do it, but because he couldn't reach him early. But it'll be too late in this round. It'll certainly have to go into the last round. The 10th and last round then of this light heavyweight contest, and the formal handshake there, and what a good game customer Ronnie Wilson has proved. So there's no point now in Finnegan wishing to coast home. He really wants to get stuck in this last 3 minutes, because he's found out already that life is rather tough at the top. But Finnegan also a good stayer now, had several 15-round fights. And then Finnegan just, you might have spotted that, nudging Wilson with his shoulder there to get him into a punch position. And he's catching up with the Canadian now, but full marks to the Wilson. He's trying to fight back. No, he's hanging on. He must be hurt with 2 minutes to go of the contest, and he's really throwing Wilson around. Can he make it a spectacular finish? I think that Finnegan realizes that he's got to turn this on now to please all the viewers as well as his wife. But it looks as though Wilson might deny Finnegan this. He keeps shaking his head as though he's having a bit of trouble either with the hair in his eyes, or there's a bit of the cut above his eye there. Finnegan, as Graze is giving him a bit of trouble. I haven't seen him do that before. Not before this fight, anyway. And you just see that left eye closing of Wilson there. They're getting a bit untidy, and Wilson hanging on for dear life, and can you blame him? He's quite satisfied now to have completed the course on his two legs with 60 seconds to go. And rallying a bit defiantly here too, and he's Finnegan shoving him off there, trying to push him up to get his punches going. And the referee almost pushing Finnegan into action. a good punch-up it is in the last round. What a good finish. And the crowd are cheering this Wilson, as well as the performance of Finnegan. What a crowd pleaser. But Wilson's really is hanging on now. There it is, he's clutching away, saying, well, I'm just waiting to hear that bell. It'll sound like an orchestra when it comes. And we've got the countdown now to the final bell. And it's all over. Surely now a decision for Finnegan beyond question, and the referee dwelling to make sure he doesn't pick the wrong hand up. Finnegan consoling the other corner. Yes, the formal verdict by referee Dakin for the triple champion Chris Finnegan. Made hard work early on, but really was the boss later in the fight.
The late Chris Finnegan in action back in 1972, and John, that was quite a year for him, wasn't it?
It was a fantastic year. He got his chance for a world title shot that year, and that was the big one against Bob Foster. It was voted Ring Magazine Fight of the Year, and Finnegan gave him a real good battle, and he was so courageous. In the end, though, it was his misfortune, I think, that he came up against one of the great light heavyweights of all time. If you take Archie Moore out of the equation, Bob Foster was perhaps the best there was. And Chris got floored, I think, in the 10th or the 11th, was it? And then, even then, he still came back at Foster, but Foster finished it off in the 14th round. Fantastic fight. And then 2 contests against John Conti. First one he lost on points. Second one, I think even John might admit there was a bit of the old head went in. And Chris Finnegan got stopped on cuts.
But John said he was one of the hardest guys he'd ever fought.
Yeah.
What do you remember of Chris Finnegan, the fighter?
Well, Chris Finnegan, the fighter, was quite exceptional. But people talk about the golden era of like the 80s, but also the 70s, that era that they come from, when you had like Finnegan, Conti, Bunny Johnson, Bunny Sterling, Vernon Solis down at featherweight. That era was also a golden era for world boxing. We had some great stars coming out of there, but he'll be sadly missed. But we've got a lot of memories to hold on to.
Barry?
He was an exceptional amateur, Southpaw, won the gold medal in '68 in Mexico. Had he been around nowadays, he would undoubtedly have been a world champion and would have held it for a long time. He was one of the toughest guys you could ever meet, trained by Freddie Hill. They were called the Battersea Hill mob.
Yeah, Lavender Hill mob. Lavender Hill
mob, because and of course Freddie was an old managed by Sam Burns and promoted by Jarvis Astaire. So he was a terrific guy, hard-working, old-fashioned. He developed that old sort of style. He had that old sort of southpaw, in a 70s sort of style, but tough as nails. And as John said, you know, the sheriff from Albuquerque, Bob Foster, one of the greatest light heavyweights of all time. So to come up against him was rather unfortunate. And John Conti too wasn't too bad, was it?
He was a bit old-fashioned as well with the way he trained, wasn't he? I mean, people who went along and sparred with him, and with Kevin, his brother, who was an outstanding fighter as well, a terrific fighter. They said he had this maxim which he carried right through life: win or lose, drink your booze. He didn't used to miss too many pints of Guinness, did he?
Absolutely, no, he liked it.
Well, I'll tell you what.